Hi, my name is Michelle from DIY Life with Michelle, and I do furniture makeovers, room makeovers and DIY projects around the house. And in this video I'm going to show you how I took a white dresser that kind of had mid-century vibes, I'd say. It had this gorgeous base and beautiful tapered peg legs. And I'm going to show you how I turned it into a beautiful updated dresser. The first thing I did was take off all of the hardware because I knew I would be reusing that. And then I went in and gave it a really good clean, first with some hot soapy water with some Dawn dish soap in it. Dawn dish soap is great because it's a degreaser, which means that it helps get off any inbuilt grime or dirt that's kicked up over the years. After I went in with the Dawn dish soap, I went back over with some clean hot water just to get any residue off. Once the dresser was clean, I went in with some Elmer's wood fillet just to fill in a couple of gouges on the dresser base and one or two on the dresser drawers. Once that was dry, I gave everything a good scuff sand. So what that means is I went in with a pretty high grit sandpaper, 220 grit, and basically the higher the grit, the finer the sandpaper is, so the less rough it is, I guess. And scuff sand is just a really good way to very slightly rough up the surface so your paint can adhere to it very well. Sometimes if a surface is too shiny, paint has a bit of trouble adhering to it. Once everything had been scuff sanded, I wiped it all down just to make sure I got off any fine dust that might have come from the sanding process. I put tape around the edge of all of my drawers. I was going to be spray painting these drawers, and this allowed me to make sure I'd get no overspray on the sides. I had a drawer where the sides were coming apart a little bit, so I got my wood glue and put glue within the join, and then I clamped the drawers to ensure that it had time to dry together. And I also used my wooden mallet to just hammer everything correctly into place so it was sitting beautifully for it to dry. To give a bit of contrast to this dresser, I really wanted to do the top two drawers in a wood tone. And so I had a bit of a look on at this white manufactured finish that was on the dresser to begin with, because I was pretty sure that there was wood underneath that. So I got out my Orbital Sander and my sandpaper, and I actually just sanded the finish off, which ended up working pretty well, and there was some really nice wood underneath that. I decided to stain the wood with Minwax's gel stain in Walnut. So I coated that on nice and thick. I left it for 3 minutes, which is what I believe it says to leave it for on the back of the can. And then I came back in and wiped off any excess. I don't have footage of this, but I did go back in and give them a top coat as well in the same Minwax Polycrylic in the Satin finish to match the rest of the dresser. I also used my Wagner 3000 sprayer. First I lined the paint pot with a disposable liner, and this just saves time on cleanup later. And then I used a strainer to pour my paint into the paint pot, and this just means that you get really smooth paint. There's no little bits of debris or paint that's dried up in there. This is a really important part of it, because if you have little bits like that in your pot, it can actually clog up your spray gun. To paint this dresser, I used Fusion Mineral Paint in Coal Black, and I love working with the Fusion Mineral Paint because it doesn't require a primer. It's got really good adhesion and coverage. So unfortunately, I don't have any footage of me doing my first coat of paint on the dresser base and drawers. So you'll see me here, I've already done the first coat of paint, and I'm ready to go in for the second coat. I actually sanded in between coats with a very fine grit sandpaper, 220. And when I do this sand, I'm not trying to sand any of the paint off. I'm just very lightly going over to rub down any little bits of dust or things that I might have got in the coat, so that I can get a really smooth finish afterwards. After I had sanded it down, I went in and wiped all that sanding dust off and went in with my second coat of paint. I'd taken off the handles from this dresser because I knew I was going to reuse them, but they just needed a little bit of love. So first I gave them a really good wash in some soapy water, and then I rinsed them all off in some clean water, because I knew I wanted to spray paint these all in a gold colour, and I wanted to make sure they were nice and clean to start with. First I went in with some primer, and I started priming with this primer and then my spray can stopped working. So I had to do take 2 and come in with a different primer afterwards that I had, and it ended up working fine. Once the primer was dry, I came in with my Rust-o-leum gold spray paint, and I coated all of the handles with very light coats of the spray paint. You don't want to do heavy coats because then sometimes the paint can run and drip, so you want just lots of light coats. After the second coat of paint had dried, I sanded again with the 220 grit sandpaper, wiped it down, and it was time to go in with my top coat. I used Minwax's Polycrylic in a satin finish, and I just tinted it very slightly with a little bit of the leftover Fusion Mineral Paint. And what this does, it just helps prevent any cloudiness. Sometimes when you put a clear top coat over a darker colour, you can get a little bit of cloudiness in the finish, and tinting it with a little bit of the darker paint just helps prevent this. And I practiced on a piece of cardboard first with my spray gun, just to make sure I was getting the right flow coming out that I was happy with. And then I went in and did my top coat. Now this dresser I found on Facebook Marketplace for $50. Now I had some material costs that went into this as well. The paint, the top coat, spray paint, some sanding paper, things like that. And all in, I was around $40 all in with materials for this dresser. So I was $90 in total. And then I sold this dresser for $450. So overall, I made $360 profit on this flip, which I was very happy with. And that's kind of what I have found in my market I can sell a dresser like this for. I know elsewhere dressers can sell for a lot more and a lot less. So if you're watching this and you have seen similar dressers in your area sell, let me know in the comments below what a dresser like this would sell for in your market. Once I painted the dresser, stained the drawers, and also touched up the hardware, it was time to put it all back together again and take some photos. But first of all, I just want to give you a reminder of what the dresser looked like before I started this process. And this is what it looked like at the end.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing down below. It really helps me out and allows me to keep making these videos. And if you enjoy dresser makeovers, I have a whole playlist of different dresser flips. So feel free to check out the playlist. I'll link it down below.